Keen, and he was born and raised a girl. He realized his transgender identity at age 22 after many years of confusion and depression. He now owns his own business. He's an activist for transgender rights, and he publicly shares his life through social media and on his YouTube channel. And we'll be sharing that maybe at the end of the presentation, right, Liam? We're happy that he's here with us tonight, sharing his journey of discovery and living his most authentic self. His goal is to educate others about transgender experience and to continue to strive to be the person that his younger self would have benefited from witnessing. So we're just really happy that you're here and happy that you've all joined us tonight. So with that, Liam.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is my first time doing this virtually. I've done several in person, so this is a little bit different, but I'm excited nonetheless to be able to share in some capacity. So I'm going to share my screen so you don't have to see my face. Well, you'll see my face in many different forms, I suppose. Let's see. Myself. Okay. So my title for this presentation has changed several times over the years. My first time doing a talk like this was actually how I came out to my human sexuality class in my senior year of college. We each had to do, I think it was like a 10-minute presentation for a grade. And I had just realized my coming out had just happened. And my teacher said, how about you talk about that for your presentation? And I was like, okay. So at that time I called it Becoming Liam. And then I did that several times and I realized I'm not becoming Liam. I've always been Liam. And so I changed the name to Uncovering Liam, because it was kind of like peeling back the layers of myself and realizing, Liam was there all along. And now I've changed it to Unapologetically Liam. One day I'd like to write a book and that will be the title. So I'm going to try and make it cohesive with that. But I just strive to live my life without apology. I spent a long time putting my needs second to everybody else's and what I thought everybody else would think and what society expected of me. So now it's my time to be me uninhibitedly. So we're going to take it all the way back to 27 years ago. On January 23rd, 1994, I entered the world as Kayla Danielle McGann, first born to my parents, and all the societal expectations of what it meant to be assigned female at birth were placed upon me immediately. Pink dresses, the whole 9 yards of what society deems a female should be and do, even beginning as a baby. I have one sister who's 2.5 years younger than me. And looking back on it, we were totally a brother-sibling relationship if you look at it now. I disliked her until about middle school. We were as opposite as you could get. She was girly. She loved dresses. She loved having her hair done. She liked doing her makeup. She was a dancer. Everything the polar opposite of what I was. I played soccer. I was a tomboy, rough and tumble. I played with G.I. Joe. She played with Barbies, and none of our interests really intersected with each other. I hated having to go to her dance recitals. She didn't particularly like going to my soccer games. And we were as opposite as two girls could be. Growing up, I also, these were our close family friends, my parents' good friends from college. We all were around the same age, so it was always me and their son were 1 year apart. And so it was like the two boys and the two girls. That's how I always felt it to be. I didn't really understand that I was different than him until as we got older, we stopped having sleepovers, we stopped taking baths together, we stopped doing the things we had been doing since we were little children. Once we got to be about school age, it's like, oh, can't take a bath together anymore. And, in my head, it was like, well, why not? We're the same. And I can remember one time, as kids do, it was like, you show me yours, I'll show you mine, in the backyard, in the shed in the backyard of my parents' house. And I was so confused about, why does he have a penis and I don't, and I can remember thinking to myself, like, well, when am I going to get that? I didn't understand why I was having these thoughts and why I felt that way. But to me, we were just the same. And I knew that, and I felt different than the girls. I hated when I was lumped in with the little girls. I didn't want to be in that grouping. I wanted to be with him. And that's how I felt most of my growing up years, even in school. I tried to hang out with the boys, but they, didn't want a girl hanging out with them. And I was a little too weird to hang out with the girls because I didn't feel like a girl. So I was that kid who just walked around the playground, by myself, occasionally getting picked on and things like that because I didn't really fit into either group. It was a lonely time. And I had a lot of extreme discomfort about my hair. That was one of the first real dysphoria things I struggled with. Looking back, I can see that all these things I were doing were related to having gender dysphoria, which is the disconnect between one's assigned sex and your gender on the inside. So I didn't realize when I was doing these things that was me, expressing gender dysphoria and then making myself feel better. But to wear a hat, I couldn't see my hair and I could, pretend like I was that little boy that I always felt on the inside. And I wore that winter hat that you see in several of these photos like year round. The picture of me and my aunt, that is in the middle of August in Delaware where it's like 95. But I wore that hat all the time because I felt better wearing it. And then if I couldn't see my hair, I could, forget that I had it and I could forget all the, expectations that were on me for having long hair and what that meant I should be like as a person. In a similar way, I always wore my hair tied back at the base of my neck so that when I looked straight on in the mirror, I couldn't see it. Again, that self-correction and that self-comforting of like, okay, I feel better when I do this thing. And so I always did that. And one of my biggest sources of anxiety throughout all of my school years was what would happen if my hair tie broke and I didn't have another one or somebody couldn't put it up for me. Like through about third grade, I don't think I could put my hair up on my own. So then I would go to school and my mom put it up when I left, and that was the hair I had to have for the whole day. And I was always so worried about what would happen if it fell out. I didn't want to have to wear my hair down. I wanted it to be up. I hated having it. And so that, even throughout high school and college, I always made sure I had a hair tie in every pocket and on my wrist because I used to have nightmares where my hair tie broke in the middle of something really important and my hair fell down and I couldn't put it back up. Like, huge source of anxiety for me was having my hair in a feminine way. These are my Halloween costumes from my youth. We only did Halloween up till age 10. But I was a prince and Peter Pan and an army man. Those are all very masculine things. Tigers aren't gendered, but I suppose they can be more masculine than per se a bunny or something like that. But always was really more interested in acting out male roles, especially playing house as a kid. I was always the father. I was always the dad. I was even the dog sometimes. If I was able to be called a boy's name, I was happy about it. And a lot of the times in my little fantasy world of playing by myself, I was always acting out a male role or something like that. Because I knew that being called he felt better. I didn't know why. Again, I didn't know why I was doing that, but I just knew that it felt better for me. So growing up, I lived with my parents and my grandparents and my sister. So my grandfather died 3 years ago, and I was going through photo albums, and I found this picture in one of the photo albums that he kept. I'm guessing it's from third grade based on how neat my handwriting is. It got quickly quite illegible after that. But I don't remember drawing this picture at all, and I drew myself as a boy. It's quite clear between, the clothes that I drew my grandfather and my father wearing is the same thing I drew myself wearing, and I drew myself without hair. And I had no recollection of this, and I'm sure there's several other drawings like this out there where I was drawing myself as a boy and not remembering it. I can't really remember if I expressed things like this to my parents or to other adults around me, like, hey, I feel like a boy. I don't know if I had the language. I cannot remember. A lot of my childhood is just a blank. I don't remember what it was like. I can remember pictures of myself as a child, but I can't remember specifics very well. And it was around this time also I was really interested in writing books. So I was always writing a book and illustrating, and it was always just a story about a boy doing things. There was no plot. There was really no climactic moment. It was just like, he rode his bike and broke his arm, and then his sister was, and I think I was just writing out like the fantasy of what I wished my childhood could be like. Looking back on that now, I wish I had copies of those just to read again. And I really was just writing about the life that I wish I could have. And middle school is when all these feelings of, discomfort and loneliness intensified. Middle school is horrible for everyone. Just across the board, it's not a good time for even cisgender people and straight cisgender people. It's rough for all of us, but especially when you feel a disconnect between your body and your sense of self. And my friends, all my female friends were excited about getting their period and getting bras and wearing makeup. And I was just like, I don't want to do any of that. Like, that's not interesting to me. Doesn't feel like something that I should be doing. It feels like something that everybody else should be doing, but not me. And I can remember one moment my friends were moved. I think it was either 6th or 7th grade. They were moving into a new house and we were helping them with, painting and remodeling a little bit. And so us kids were playing outside and we were playing hide and seek and I was hiding under the window. And I could hear my mom and their mom talking about how I didn't want to shave my legs yet. And my mom was trying to figure out how to talk to me about that. And I can remember thinking, like, why would I want to? It was a thought that had never crossed my mind. It was not something I ever thought about doing. Nothing that was, what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't feel it was something that I should do. And I think after I heard that conversation a few weeks later, I went and asked my mom, like, hey, can I shave my legs? Trying to fulfill that for her, what she expected of me. And because kids were starting to call me orangutan because I have red hair. And so all my body hair is also red. But middle school was really the peak of this dysphoria. And I think if somebody at this age had asked me, do you feel like a boy? I would have said yes. So if we had the resources that we have nowadays, I think this is the age I would have probably transitioned if I could go back. So having some sort of speech like this, if I heard someone talking about it, I would have known I'm not the only person in the world that feels this way. But it was around this age where I got a really short haircut, like this middle photo. And we went to a barbecue. It was a birthday party for a young girl in our church. And so there's people there that didn't know us. And somebody thought that I was a boy. They were talking to me that way. They were talking to my parents about their son. And my parents flipped out about it. They said, we can't have this happening anymore. You can't dress like this when we go to functions because people think you're our son. And that's just not happening anymore. And so I had to start growing my hair out again. But also around this age, when I was kind of playing out games in my own room, I was always acting out. Usually I was like a football star or a basketball star. I had a little basketball hoop in my bedroom on the closet door. And I just acted out this fantasy world of being a boy. And I would, put a sock in my pants and sag my pants down low and be like, okay, this is what I'd look like if I was a boy. And I knew it made me feel better when I was doing those things. So entering high school was right after I'd had this haircut and my parents had their little crisis of, oh no, people think you're a boy. And they came up with this contract for me. So I was 15 when they came up with this. And if I did all these things, I could get a cell phone. So what 15-year-old doesn't want a cell phone? So I, signed a contract and begrudgingly followed the guidelines. I think I had to do it for like a month before I could get the cell phone. So I had to grow my hair out from the photo on the left to at least the photo on the right. I couldn't have it any shorter than at my shoulders. That way no one could mistake me for a boy, right? Now I remember this contract, but I didn't remember how specific the terminology was. Like I found this document again when I was packing up stuff from my closet in my childhood bedroom like 5 years ago when I was moving out. And I was shocked to see how often they use the word feminine. Like every single sentence mentions the word feminine. And in my opinion, they could see what was going on and they were trying to just kind of squash the last bit of tomboy right out of me, forcing me to grow up and be the woman that I was growing to be, I didn't really follow the rules that well, I'll tell you that much. I would go to school in the, assigned outfit that I was supposed to, and I would go right into the bathroom, change, take my earrings out so that nobody could see me in those clothes, put on some different clothes. And then at the end of the day, my mom was always there right after the bell. So I had to run into the bathroom again, put on the clothes I left the house in, run out to the car and hope nobody saw me. And I did that for months until slowly they started backing off on really enforcing it. But for all my whole freshman year of high school, I had to follow these stupid guidelines and work my way around them to be comfortable expressing myself. But towards the end of my freshman year, I was sexually assaulted by the guy I was seeing at the time. And so all kind of the gender struggle took a little bit of a backseat to that experience. And a few other negative, non-consensual sexual things happened. And so just high school was a whole mess of depression and anxiety, gender dysphoria, PTSD, the whole 9 yards. So I kind of just did what my parents expected of me, wore my hair down, dressed femininely, tried to just skate by. I didn't have the energy to really fight back against the rules that were out there for me. And I just I didn't even want to be alive, really. I mean, I thought if I can get to 16, 16 is like significant. You can drive a car when you're 16. So if I can just get to 16, like it's okay. I can die after that. So that was my plan. Once I got to 16, I don't have to go any farther. I don't have to figure out my life. 16, that's a pretty good life. People will remember me for, making it to 16. Um, Obviously, I got past 16, but these are some photos from my junior and senior prom, which feels extremely bizarre to look at nowadays. But I certainly wanted to dress more like the girl who was my date than I wanted to be wearing that dress, but I had to wear that dress. So my senior year of high school, I realized that I liked women. I was kind of forced out of the closet. But that moment was like, oh, okay, everything I felt for my whole life makes sense. In order to like girls, you have to feel like a boy. That was how I understood the world at that time. Was like, okay, every feeling I've had makes sense now. It's because I like women. This is what it feels like. So I went into college really excited to explore my identity and really try and understand my lesbian identity more. So I joined the pride group. I joined the rugby team, which is a very queer sport. And I was kind of confused about how to express myself because I had for so long been kind of like just doing what everybody else told me to do. And so I was always back and forth between, wearing a hoodie and wearing my hair up or wearing my hair down and trying to dress nicer. I didn't really know what my style was. I went back and forth between the two things a lot. My freshman year, I got to meet Chaz Bono, who's a well-known trans man. Sophomore year, I met Laverne Cox, a well-known trans woman. And I still didn't connect the dots. I was like, wow, it's so cool that those people can do that. I wish I could do that. But I didn't understand why I wished I could do that. I just knew that I wished I could do that. Towards the end of my sophomore year, I decided, I think it was either between sophomore and freshman year, or between sophomore and junior year. Honestly, timeline, can't remember. I went and got a whole new wardrobe. My parents paid for it for me because I went to them and said, I think I need to start dressing more like a woman, because I was just kind of like, I don't really know what to do, but I feel like I just have to try and be what everyone's expecting me to be. So I went and got a whole new wardrobe, including a purse. The purse lasted probably 2 days before I was like, why do I want to carry this around? I got pockets, why don't I have anything to carry in this purse? And I tried to stick to that dress code that I had made for myself, but very quickly I went right back to sweatpants and t-shirts and tying my hair up. And it was in college that I discovered that, hey, drinking really takes away all of these feelings I've had for my entire life. When I'm drunk, I don't feel confused. I don't feel the disconnect between myself. I'm just feeling great, So I started to self-medicate that way, because those feelings of confusion and depression and just, I always describe it as kind of like chaos. I never felt settled. I always just kind of felt like I was floating around, like, who am I? Who am I in terms of my relationship to the world, to other people? And alcohol was my escape from that. So I got very heavily involved with drinking, and rugby is very much a drinking culture sport. But that was where I got into it and realized, hey, all my problems fly away when I'm drinking. And I still was really feeling disconnected from myself. I mean, I had Tumblr at this time. That was when that was a big thing. It was kind of like a internet diary where nobody in real life really followed me there. I could post whatever I wanted and nobody would, know me outside of that little bubble. So, and I was always posting things like, why do I feel so empty? I have all these good things, but I can't feel it. I'm not, why do I feel so numb? Why am I like this? What is wrong with me? Just so many posts like that where I just coming back to this point, like, why do I feel nothing? I have all these good things in my life. I'm supposedly have found my identity as a queer woman. Why can't I be happy? I have relationships, I have friends, I'm in college, I'm doing all these things. But at the end of the day, I still just feel nothing. I hate my existence as a person. I don't want a future. My spring semester, so 6 years ago, actually, of my junior year, I was studying abroad in Poland. And this was really the turning point for me. Getting away from my comfort zone, being at Keene State, everybody, a lot of people, you're in the same places, you've gotten comfortable there, but getting out, being in a different country, exploring different things, I was able to kind of grapple with my identity more. And so it was me and 2 guys and 2 girls from Keene. And so the whole time, same as when I was a kid, I felt like one of the guys. I felt like when I was with them, I was like, I feel like I'm the same as them. Like, I just feel like I'm the same as them. I feel like when we do the guys and girls thing, I should be going with them. I felt like I was intruding by living with the girls I was living with. I didn't feel comfortable. Like, I feel like I'm in a space I'm not supposed to be in by sharing a room with these two other girls, you know? We didn't have a lot of homework during study abroad because they want you to explore. So I spent a lot of late nights just watching YouTube videos. How do you know you're transgender? I'd watch transition timelines, I'd watch surgery, I'd watch coming out videos, and I still was like, well, I don't know. You know, that seems like me, but I don't think I could ever do it. You know, it was too scary to risk losing my friends and family. You know, at that point, I didn't know how anybody would react. I was like, you know, is it worth risking everything? And at that time I was like, I can't do it. You know, I wish that I could, but that's just way too scary. You know, I can't risk all of that. You know, what if I get rejected? What if I'm by myself? You know, all the thoughts like that, where it's like, should I give up my entire life for this? You know, I didn't know, and I wasn't 100% sure still, but it was like, I think this might be what it is, but you know what? I'm going to leave this in Poland. This was just me exploring myself, and now I'm going to come home, and I got to focus on the real world again. So I came back home. I was really focused on rugby. I was like, if anything, I can just be a really good rugby player. You know, I didn't really want to even do a job in my career field that I was going to school for. It was around then. Then I was like, I wish I had a manual labor job. And my family's like, why'd you go to college? I'm like, well, you told me to. So here I am getting a degree. So I just was kind of, I don't really know what I want to do with my life. And, you know, I was still really struggling with the gender, that struggle that I had kind of unearthed when I was studying abroad. And it was around November was probably one of the worst months of that year, one of the worst, hardest months of my life, to be honest. I was really fixated on the male body, and I'm like, am I straight? Why am I thinking about this? But it wasn't even in a sexual way. Honestly, it was in an aesthetic way of like, what does it look like? What does it feel like to have that body, to walk around in the world in that way? You know, that was what I was more fixated on than the sexual side of it. But at one point, it was early in November, I was really kind of hitting a crisis point. I'd been drinking and skipping my classes and not turning in big assignments, and, you know, missing out on meeting with the president. It was one of my classes was supposed to like present something to the president of the college, and I skipped it to go to the bar because I was like, I can't handle that, you know, like I just can't. So I was just in a really dark place and really struggling with all these feelings of like, what am I going to do? Graduation's coming next semester. I don't even want to be alive anymore. Like, I don't want a job. I don't want a career. I don't want a life. You know, I can't see a life as a woman. Like, what do I do? And so this picture here on the left, I went to this lake over in Jaffrey. And when I drove away from Keene State's campus, I was really thinking like, I'm never going to come back. You know, I'm driving away from my friends and my family, and like, this is it. You know, I'm going to go into these woods and who knows what happens from here, but I didn't want to be alive anymore. And I was like, this is my last time on campus. This is my last time driving this road. Like, I was really a mess. Something kept me going. You know, I went there, I put my feet in the water, grounded myself, so to speak, and survived, obviously, came back. But I tell you, when I left, I really thought it was the last time I was seeing Keene. The middle picture was from senior dance that happens at Keene State every November for the seniors. So it's called Red and White Night. I don't remember the picture being taken because that's how drunk I already was by that point in the night, about 7 p.m. I couldn't remember getting in. I can barely remember being there. And when I woke up at 3 in the morning, I was like, oh my God, we didn't take any pictures. My friend was like, yeah, here's all the pictures that we took. I didn't even remember being in this building. I didn't remember going to the dance. You know, I don't even know how I got into the dance. You know, that's beside the point, but I was just really in a rough place. And so following weekend, my friend Seth, my childhood friend, was home from the military, so we had an early Thanksgiving. And this is when I was, you know, all these things happened like weekend. So I was really like still coming back from, you know, wanting to die. And I was there for the weekend, and just everything, I felt like I couldn't connect to anybody. It was supposed to be like my family and my close friends, and I had like a mental breakdown. I was supposed to stay home for the whole weekend, and I ended up leaving that night and driving back to Keene because I was like, there's nobody here that I can talk to about how I feel. Nobody in the entire world is going to understand how I feel. Like, I felt so alone. I felt so isolated, and I was just like, I can't stay here. I can't be around all these people that are just like happy and they know who they are, and they're, you know. So I drove back to Keene, and I drove and I cried the entire time because I was like, there's nobody in the world that I can talk to about how I feel. And the following weekend was Thanksgiving, and I just remember like the same thing. I was just like, I was there, but I don't think I was really there for the events. And so during the holiday season that year, I had ankle surgery, so I was laid up for a while. I was really like, I think I really want to shave my head. Like, that's something that I really want to do. Um, I thought about it for a long time. I hated my hair, always wore it up, everything I've talked about before. I never felt connected to my hair whatsoever. But my friends made me wait until I got back to campus. I was going to just do it one day over the break and come back with no hair, but they're all like, no, you have to wait. We want to be there when you do it. So in the lobby of Holloway Hall on King's campus, my friend shaved my head. I'm slightly annoyed at all of my friends who were there that did not bother to take a video of this monumental moment that I would love to look back on, but I can still remember it. And halfway through, my friend was like, are you sure you don't want just like a pixie cut? Like we can stop. And I was like, no, like get rid of it. I'm ready. Shave it off. And as soon as I looked in the mirror, everything that I've described so far, like lined up in the line. It was like, ding, transgender, that's the answer. And it was like, oh shit. And also, oh my God, like I finally was seeing myself. I don't know how to describe it in words, that moment where it was like, finally what I was looking at was me instead of just like this person who was supposed to be me. And I had bought these backwards hats because I missed wearing a hat like from when I was a kid. And so I was like so excited. First thing I did was take some selfies wearing these hats. And I felt so good. I was like, I can finally express myself the way I'm supposed to. And that was the beginning of everything, truly. So the first thing I did was post a video on YouTube. Back then I had like 2 subscribers. I really just posted like our rugby montages up there so I could share them in our Facebook page. Like I didn't really make any content back then. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to post on the internet. Maybe somebody will watch it. Maybe somebody won't. I'm just not ready to tell friends and family yet. So that was up there. That was the beginning of my YouTube journey. Slowly I started telling friends and family, and some of the first people I told were my grandparents, both sets of grandparents. So I sent them this big long email explaining, how I felt as a kid, how I felt as a teen, what was going to happen next. And, pretty much said like, I'm the same person, but like, this is what's going to happen. And I was so afraid of the reaction of people, close to me like that. But my grandparents who I grew up living with, their emails response back was essentially, we've been waiting for you to tell us what's been wrong. So they could see that I was miserable as a child. They could see that I was miserable as a teenager. And they were just waiting for me to finally be able to talk about it. Another person I was really scared to tell was my sister, because we had this really close sister relationship, and I didn't want her to feel like that was going to go away. And I didn't want that to go away either. I didn't want to lose that connection we had as sisters. And so that I went down and surprised her. That's what that photo was from. She thought her friend was bringing up Chinese food. She was actually bringing me. They also got Chinese food, but she was totally surprised. And I had written her this letter, and we both cried in my car. And as I gave it to her, and she said, you're my sibling, like no matter what, we're always going to have that, and I love you, I support you. So I was the most terrified to tell her because I didn't want to lose that connection. And this quote here is what I posted on Facebook to come out publicly. It's like the quote I live by. It's in all of my social media bios. Have the courage to be exactly who you are without an apology. Hence the title of this whole thing, Unapologetically Liam. Now, my parents, when I was originally out as a lesbian, they did not support that. So I, knew that when I come out as, LGBT, trans man, they're totally not going to be for it. Any of those letters, they would not support. And so I saved them till the very end. And my sister was like, you really need to tell them before we're home for like spring break, because I want to be able to call you Liam and not have it be weird. So I was like, okay. I had to call them over Skype. I cried the whole time. They just kind of looked at me with confused expressions. And the first thing that my mom said after a long kind of silence, awkward silence, was, but you'll never be a real man. And so that I was not surprised by their reaction, but those words still sting nonetheless. And a couple of years ago, I found this photograph, and I just felt like it really spoke to my entire life experience. They're looking down on me with this expectation, and looking at me the way society is going to expect me to become, and I'm looking back like, nope, that's not what it's going to be. A very powerful picture for me. So they refused to call me Liam, and they refused to call me he. And so after my grandparents had their 50th wedding anniversary that August, so I had been out publicly for about 6 months, and I was like 1 month on hormones at this time. And the whole weekend it was, most people were calling me Liam and he, and I was like very masculine presenting, and even like strangers were gendering me correctly. And then I kept hearing my parents, being like, oh, well, we got the girls their own hotel room. And it was just things like that where it was like, I'm feeling so good. And then I'm just like knocked right back down. And I was like, I can't keep putting myself through this, especially early transition. Like everything feels very fragile. Like one person saying ma'am will ruin your entire like week to the next 2 weeks, because you want to be so badly the gender you finally have figured out that you are, and then everybody is still seeing you in the other way. So now if somebody calls me ma'am, I'm like, whatever, but back then it was much more sensitive. So I wrote them this letter pretty much saying, if you can't call me Liam and he, then I'm not going to see you anymore. Not for holidays, not for events, not for anything. Like I have to take care of myself, and I just can't be around you. And I thought that me putting this ultimatum out there would make them maybe think about changing their opinions, but they wrote me back 2 letters addressed to Kayla, and I knew where they stood at that point. These are just some quotes from their letter, essentially saying, we were given a daughter, and we don't think that what you think is true. We think that what God says is true. And I was like, I've never said that God is making a mistake. I never once said that. I think God knew what he was doing when he made me trans, but they would disagree with that. So we didn't talk for about 6 months, and but that kind of sucked to spend the holidays by myself. I was really thinking like, oh, this is going to suck for them. But then when I'm sitting in the dark on Christmas Eve, seeing everybody's posts on Facebook with their family, I was like, this actually kind of sucks for me too. I'm sitting here in the dark with my cat. That was it. And I spent the next Christmas day, walking around the graveyard in Keene with my friend. That was how I spent Christmas that year. And I didn't like it. So it was actually my grandfather, my pop-up, who said to me, he's like, how you're doing it right now is not really working for anybody. Because he was living in the house where they were, and he could see how it was affecting them, and he could see how it was affecting me. And he's like, maybe if you change the way you're going about it, something different will happen. And I was like, you know what? I can't keep up this not talking thing. It's just not working for me. So we're now in a place where we agree to disagree, and they call me a nickname, and they call me Red. They use neutral pronouns so that neither side is offended. And that's pretty much as far as they're ever going to go. I do think my dad is a little more open-minded. Sometimes I hear him call me Liam or he, and I'm like, what? Who are you talking about? But I think that we've just agreed to meet in the middle, so there's really no forward motion. But and for me, this is what it's going to be. I mean, every other aspect of my life, they've been wonderful, great parents. And so it's hard for me I feel guilty all the time for even talking about them in a negative way, because they have done so much for me and they do love me. None of this is in a hateful way that they say these things. They think they're saying these things in the most loving and positive way that they can, And so I just accept that our relationship is the way that it is, and I take it for what it is now, and I try not to look back too much, and I just look forward and see what we can make our relationship to be. But certainly at the beginning, it was very, very difficult. So when I first came out, I was working at Five Guys, and I ended up experiencing some discrimination there. They were not supportive of me really at all in my transition. They wouldn't change my name on the schedule. They were starting to schedule me always with people who were mean to me. Like I had some coworkers that were supportive and totally called me Liam and made the switch very easily. And there were other coworkers who intentionally still called me she because they did not agree with my identity. And slowly but surely, all of my shifts were with these people who were harassing me. And so every day I went to work, for an 8 or 10 hour shift and had to deal with harassment and no support from management. And even from the very higher up, the district manager was even always misgendering me and calling me the wrong name. And he'd only ever met me after I came out, but he said, I only know you by your paperwork. That's why I'm confused. And it was a whole thing, and it was really detrimental to my mental health to be in that environment. But I couldn't just up and leave. I had to pay rent, I had to pay bills, so I had to kind of suffer through it until I could find something else. Thankfully, I found a job at Ramunto's, and I still hadn't legally changed my name when I first started there, so I was expecting the same kind of issues where I'm going to have to beg them to change my name on the schedule. And the only people who knew my name were the guy who interviewed me and the manager who had done my paperwork. Other than that, everybody there only knew me as Liam. My name on my clock-in was Liam. My name on the schedule was Liam. And they were very protective, keeping that from other people from finding out. So I was going into it thinking I'm going to have to fight again with people for just dignity, and they were so supportive right off the bat. And so thankful for that experience, especially coming from Five Guys, where I was not treated too well. And now I own my own business, so I can't really complain about the boss because I am the boss. So one of the first things I knew I wanted to do when I began my transition was to start hormones to, help my body look the way I knew it should and have a more masculine appearance. So I tell you, that first day, the first picture, the selfie in the mirror, that was right after I got my first shot. I was floating on a cloud. I was so excited, and nothing really happens for the first like 3 months. You see like no changes for a long time. It's kind of working behind the scenes. Then your voice starts dropping, you get a little bit hairier, and then things really go from there. But on that first day, I was like, everything is amazing. Like it's finally happening. I felt like I had drugs coursing through my system. I was just so excited because it was like, here's this thing I've thought about for so long. Even into my teen years, I thought about it, but I didn't understand it, and now it's like, I'm finally getting to be this person. That was the best day ever. So I inject myself once a week with testosterone. I'll have to do that for the rest of my life. Especially, I plan to have lower surgery. So once I don't have a uterus anymore or any other natural hormones, I will have to be on some sort of hormones for the rest of my life, just so my body functions properly. So, but that is worth it all to me. At first, it did give me a lot of anxiety having to stab myself with a needle, but now I've been doing it for 5 years almost. So it's kind of old hat. So when I got my COVID vaccine the other day, the girl was, oh, I'm going to stab you. And I was like, I literally do this to myself once a week. I'm going to be okay with you doing it real quick to my arm. So second thing I knew I wanted to do was legally change my name, because as I started to progress in my transition and my voice had dropped, I was getting gendered correctly on the phone, but then I had to tell people, no, actually the name is this, and it was frustrating to go into bars or anywhere that I needed to show my ID or even my, debit card. I can remember one time I was out to dinner at the Stage with a couple of friends, and as soon as we all showed our IDs to get a drink, that was when she started addressing the table as ladies. And so those kind of things just kept happening more often. It was like, I need this name gone, gone forever. So on September 20th, 2016, officially became Liam Daniel McGann. The only thing I have left to change right now is my passport and my birth certificate. New Hampshire makes it into a much longer process. And so we're still trying to get legislation passed to make it a much simpler process. But Sununu keeps vetoing it. So maybe next year. Third thing I knew I wanted was top surgery. So my greatest source of dysphoria at the time came from having a chest that immediately would out me as a female-bodied person. And so I wore a binder. I don't have a picture of it, but it looks much like the post-op binder there. Same kind of idea, half chest binder like that. I wore that to compress my breasts to give them a more flat and masculine appearance. And so I did that for many more hours than I was supposed to. You're supposed to do it for 8 hours a day, but oftentimes I was working a 12-hour shift. And so sweating and you're wearing that and it's tight on your ribs. You can't really breathe all the way. It's not very comfortable, but it got to the point where I couldn't leave my house without wearing it. I was so uncomfortable within myself. I showered with my eyes closed. I hated every part of my body at that point in time. And so having that surgery freed me from all of that. I could simply put on a shirt and leave the house, not have to think about it anymore. I did have to pay for it out of pocket. My insurance wouldn't cover it, so I had to pay $10,000. Thankfully, I had some savings that I was going to use to buy a car, and I had some generous people. I had a GoFundMe that I think was about $3,000 worth, and then I put the rest on a credit card and paid that off for a long time, but it was worth it to me. And eventually, the scars started to trouble me a little bit because I felt nervous that people might see them and know what it meant, and therefore know that I was trans, especially in like a gym locker room or at the beach. And so I had a lot of anxiety about, can people see my scars and do they know what they mean? And are they going to automatically know I'm trans? And so on my third anniversary of top surgery, I got a cover up, which is beautiful. And you can't really see my scars anymore, I love it. So when I first came out, I was dating somebody, not this person, but I was dating somebody at the time. And we stayed together for probably much longer than we should have, because I thought, well, they know I'm trans already, so I can't, no one else is ever going to want to be with me if I'm trans. So I stayed in a relationship that I should have really left a lot sooner, because I thought, well, she already knows. So I kind of just stuck with that. And a lot of times the people that I was seeing online that were trans also had been with their partner since they first came out. So that was kind of the dominant narrative at the time was, oh, you just transition with this person and that's who you're with. So, but nonetheless, we broke up and I went through several other relationships, but then I met my now spouse on Twitter 2 years ago, almost exactly. And we connected right away and we got married last summer, a little COVID wedding. We'll have a big wedding one day, but I'm very lucky to be loved and supported and validated as a trans person. And I think a lot of times, you know, that you think how society talks about us, you really think like nobody could ever love me. You know, even when I first came out, my parents were like, you know, this is going to be a dirty secret that you have for all of your life that all of your partners in the future are going to know about. And so those are the messaging I was getting, like, you know, I'm not lovable as a transgender person, but I am, and you are. So growing up, I was in a church that was extremely conservative and evangelical. For example, the pastor of that church, he views my transition as a demonic possession, where Liam is a demon who's overtaken and overpowered the weaker Kayla. And he tells me that he always prays for her redemption. And so I can't meet him in the middle on that. That's just a little too much. So I haven't talked to him or spoken to him in many years, but he was like, you know, a third set of grandparents to me, him and his wife. So that was the church I grew up in. And I thought all churches were like this. All church people are like this. They're going to say the same things that my parents say. They're going to say the same things that my pastor says. You know, and I thought I had to choose between being a religious person and being a queer person. And obviously being a queer person was more important to me. And when my grandfather was dying, he was not afraid to die. You know, he said, you know, I'm not afraid. I know where I'm going. I'm going to be with Jesus. And I was like, wow, I want to be that sure about something again. Like I want to feel that way about my faith. It was something really important to me growing up, a big part of my life. And all throughout the years that I spent away from church, I still always longed to go back, but I didn't know how to find a safe space. It's not widely advertised that people's views are. So, you know, you think of cool, hip churches that end up being extremely conservative with their views, you know, once you get to know them. And so it was hard. I never felt like I could go into it being honest about who I was. I always had to hide a part of myself. So I just kind of was like, I guess I'm never going to be able to, you know, really explore that part of my life again. But I did a talk very much like this at Concordia Lutheran Church, which is where I now go to church. My grandparents went there for years and years and years. And they were doing a unit on transgender. They had read a book, Transforming by Austin Hartkey, which talks about how the Bible talks about what transgender people. And so the pastor asked me like, hey, can you come and talk for our last meeting before the summer break? And I was like, sure. And it was like 10 people. And it was as simple as at the end, he said to me, one of the guys came up to me and said, I hope that you come back. And I was like, wait, you want me to come back without any conditions? I don't have to repent. You know, you don't think I'm a big sinner for being transgender. It was so simple for him to just say, you know, we see you, we value you, we want you to come back. And so it took me a few months after that to really trust. You know, I was like, well, that was one nice guy. Like, I don't know about the rest of them. But in the past, sorry, I live on Main Street, motorcycles. But yeah, in the past 3 years, I've really gotten to know the community there. And it's such a wonderful place. And I look forward to being back in person. We've been all virtual throughout COVID. So, but it's a really wonderful, loving community, the kind of community that I wanted to find again. And it's a big supportive piece of my life. So what I'm up to now, I've gotten really involved with advocacy. When I first came out, it was kind of like, I didn't want to be so public. I was like, hormones, top surgery, blend in. That was my goals. You know, I didn't want to be known. Funny now where I'm at, but I realized that like I have this voice and I have this platform and the ability to share, and I should, and I have been. So I got involved with HB 1319, which was 3 years ago, the bill that added gender identity to the discrimination protections in New Hampshire. So I shared my story about Five Guys. I spoke at rallies. I spoke to all the committees, and at the House and the Senate. I was even on the news and got really, really involved and met a lot of wonderful people. And throughout that campaign, we were doing panels called Ask a Trans Person Anything. So we went throughout the state just answering questions and, you know, putting a face on the issue so that people would understand it better. A lot of times people are fearful, so they just say, I don't know what that is, like I'm not going to support that. And so we were able to turn a lot of people and have them be able to contact their reps and say, hey, like I met this person, this is their story, you need to support this bill. And so really putting a face to the issue and a story to the issue does help. And we were even on the Exchange back in 2019 with Laura Kanoy, which was a super fun experience being on the radio, and I'd love to do that again. And obviously I've been doing talks like this throughout. I've been to Connecticut, Pennsylvania, right here in Keene, New Hampshire. Now, funnily enough, I did the one here in Keene because the woman I connected to, her sister was at my talk in Pennsylvania, and she mailed her sister my business card and said, you got to contact this guy. I was like, well, I actually live in Keene, so it's really no problem for me to come over and do that for you. So it's just funny how that's happened. And I really wanted to start expanding and doing this more, but then COVID happened and kind of everything has taken a backseat. So it's really cool to be here. I'd rather be able to see your faces. I feel a little bit awkward having talked to my computer this entire time, but it's much more fun when I can hear your laughter or reactions, but we're plugging right away. So like Lori said, I'm very active on YouTube, and I've also just got into TikTok. I don't quite understand it so well, but that's where the youth is at now. And I really am passionate about connecting to people where, you know, when I was 13, if somebody had been talking and posting videos, I would have really benefited from seeing them. So my channel started out as a place for myself to just document my journey. You know, I was really just wanted to be able to look back and say, look how far I've come, because at the beginning, the changes are slow and you feel really bad about yourself, but then you can look back and be like, wow, actually a lot's changed in the past 2 months or the past year. And now it's really interesting for me to go back and be like, what was I thinking about 5 years ago? And I can go back and listen to myself and see how I've changed and, you know, how my mindset has changed. And I've shifted all over the board about various aspects of my life. And so it's not so much transition focused anymore. It's really just kind of like a video diary for me now. It's very unedited, much like this talk. I don't really edit things. I just talk, post it, and I watch it again like a year later. You know, I don't go back and run it over again and again and again. So and TikTok has been really interesting, but I'm still getting used to how it all works. But it's a fun place where a little bit more short form. So I'm not quite as good as it, but I've connected with a lot of people on there, and it's been really cool so far. So Lori asked me to share these resources if people wanted to take a screenshot or a photograph, just so you can check out some more information. I believe she's also going to be sending an email after us, email follow-up, if you want to check out more resources like this. But you're caught up to date with my life, so to speak, and so we can go into the question and answer section if we want, and I can unshare my screen now if you want to see my real face again. I know how to unshare. Oh, stop share. There we go. Technologically challenged over here. I need some water.
Liam, thank you so much.
Oh, you were able to share it in the questions. Can they see the questions?
I believe so. I shared some resources in that in the Q&A. So the same resources that you had given, I put them in there.
Okay, cool.
From all sorts of, you know, the resources, links to your talk with Laura Kanoy, a link to your YouTube channel, a link to MCVP's website, and some resources there, as well as the Trevor Project and the National Center for Transgender Equality. So, so people can grab those off of that. I don't have your Instagram or your TikTok, so.
My name is all the same on everything. It's just Liam McGann across the board. Okay. Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. So if you just Google me, everything usually pops up.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Well, it's wonderful to know how to reach you, so that people can reach you, ask you questions, learn more. We're so happy. We do have a couple of questions.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I see some.
That I'd like to ask you. We have a question that came through. Did your grandparents or parents support you more, or was it the same amount of support?
My grandparents, quite obviously. My parents do not support my transition. Strangely enough, they came to our wedding, but I don't really know where they stand on it. Either they do see me as a man or they do support a gay wedding. So we go back and forth all the time about it. My spouse and I, like, what do we think that they're thinking? I'm like, let's just not try and figure out what they're thinking. I don't know what they're thinking. And we've always been a very kind of passive family. We don't really have those deep conversations. So we have a very surface level relationship, and that's okay with me. I want to be able to be around for family things, and I kind of put that like in a box, and like it used to bother me a lot more, but now it's kind of like, this is what it is. My grandparents are my number one supporters. My grandmother's watching. She's been to literally every single one of these I've done, from my church where she was there, to the summer camp, to Connecticut, to Pennsylvania, to Keene, to everywhere. So I'm very thankful. I have a lot of support from both sets of my grandparents. My other grandparents, they live down in Delaware, but my grandmother there is very supportive. She even has some non-binary people. She's a deacon, so she has some non-binary clergy people that she works with. So we had some great conversations about pronouns and gender identity, and so they've all been very supportive. And my grandfather, my living grandfather, he always calls me grandson and gives me a hug, and it's just the best ever. So
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. You've got a lot of gratitude in the question Q&A. There's another one who said, outstanding presentation, bravery, and sharing your personal story. Thank you. Is there something that you wish schools provided you in your younger years?
I mean, I can think about sex ed. I remember being in sex ed in the 5th grade, like with the girl, they separated girls and boys. And I remember being like, I think I'm in the wrong room. Like, I felt uncomfortable learning about the girls. I just felt like that wasn't me. And so my aunt, I have a cousin who's 11 now, and she texted me and said, like, they're doing a whole unit about gender identity in the sex ed for Isaac. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And that was not something talked about in middle school or high school sex ed at all. We didn't talk about sexuality or gender identity. I had no clue what transgender even was until I went to college and met a transgender person and was like, what? So I think just having the conversations about, gender is in your head and sex is your body, and the two things can be different quite often.
That's great.
Even having the conversation, we didn't have the conversation growing up. Nowadays, they do get to have the conversation at least.
Yes, and we at MCVP, we have an education program where we do go into schools and we talk about sexuality and
that's wonderful.
Yeah, and talk about that. So, and they're free services and available at any school. So wonderful. I just wanted to say that. We have another question that asks, how long have you been on testosterone? So
5 years in July, this coming July. So I don't know what month is it now. So that's like 3 years and 9 months now. Or 4 years and 9 months. Math. I don't do math very well. It feels like it's strange now. It feels like it's been a short amount of time, but also feels like it's always been this way. Really, if thinking about my past self is very strange. It feels like a different person. It feels like I'm talking about like my sister, like I'm just describing her story or something. It's different. It feels different to me to look back. When I look back at my own memories now, I look like this in my memories. So it's strange. It's strange to look back. But yes, 5 years in July.
Years. That's good. Thank you. We have another question who said that you didn't really touch on your drinking, and maybe there was a purpose to that. But if you're open to sharing, did you ever get help or get sober?
Yes, actually, the 30th of this month will be 3 years sober. So, yeah. So I tried and failed for many a time. I would get 2 months sober and not be able to keep up with it. And I just thought, well, this is stupid. I might as well just, like drink, and every 2 months I'll drink. I can't get past the 2 month hurdle. And the last time I got drunk was after my grandfather had died, and then my cat died 6 days later. He was only 2 years old. So I was like totally gobsmacked by grief, and I just felt terrible, and I went drinking to try and feel better, and I felt worse, and I was like, this doesn't work anymore. It doesn't give me the relief anymore. I just feel guilty afterwards, and that was really like the moment where I was like, okay. It has not been easy, I'll tell you that much. I mean, I think about it quite often. If I have a bad day, if if I go to sometimes I walk by the, beer cooler at the gas station. I'm like, well, nobody would know if I got some and drank, so the thoughts are there, but I just don't act upon them.
Right. And I do know on your YouTube channel, again, I shared that in the.
I have a whole category where I talk about sobriety. Anytime I've made a video talking about it, I've made a little playlist where you can watch all those. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that helpful. There's another comment and question. Thanks for sharing, Liam. In my head, grandparents would be less apt to understand than parents just due to the generational gap. What about their personalities led you to feel comfortable telling them first? Sorry. The chat's
just knowing how my parents had reacted when I was just out as a lesbian. I mean, they told me then, like, you're going to have a lifetime of shame and misery if you follow this path. So I just knew, like, okay, my parents aren't, I'm going to blow their world up. Like, when I was just a woman dating women, they could just ignore that. We could have a normal family interaction. We just didn't talk about who I was dating. But when I'm talking about my whole appearance changing and who I am changing, you can't ignore that. So I knew it was going to, like, blow up their world, which is why when I first started figuring it out when I was in Poland, I was like, I don't think I can do that. That seems unfair for me to blow up everything for everybody. And I felt a lot of guilt about that for a long time. My sister was the in-between. She was supporting me, but also trying to support them. And I felt so much guilt about having her be the in-between. So, and I didn't even know if my grandparents were going to be supportive. I was very scared because of age and just how it was when I was out as a lesbian. We never talked about it. My parents forbid us from talking about it. So I didn't even know where they stood on that. So it was a risk I was taking to come out to them, and I didn't know what would happen.
Mm-hmm. And what's your relationship with your parents now?
Just very surface level. We see them and, we try and act like we're a normal family, but, it's not any deeper than like, hey, how's the weather? And did you get your vaccine? And, things like that. It's not, I wouldn't get a close relationship. And I see them a lot more often than I probably would normally because my grandmother lives with them. And so I go to see her. Before COVID, I was spending once a week with her. We were volunteering together. And when my grandfather was sick, I took care of him once a week. So I saw them pretty frequently. Nowadays, not quite so frequently, but I want to see my grandmother, so I put up with seeing them a little more often. Okay,
great. Thanks for that. We have a person who thanks you for sharing your story. They're a school nurse and generally have good relationships with their students.
Yeah.
And they wonder if you would feel safe reaching out to somebody like that for support. Could you speak to this a little bit? Do you have any suggestions?
If I could, can you clarify the question?
I do wonder if they would feel safe reaching out to me for support, a school nurse.
So if I had felt safe talking to the school nurse.
Yes.
I'm not sure. I mean, in my experience of school, I didn't really interact with the school nurse very much. That wouldn't have been someone I don't think I would have thought of, making a connection to. And I didn't even really, I had no trusted adults that I could talk to about it. I mean, maybe I did. I can't remember. I've asked family, did I say things? I can't remember. Because, you hear stories nowadays of kids who are 4 years old being like, I'm a boy. It's like, did I do that? Did people just ignore me? Was it just no, you're a tomboy, things like that. I can't remember what I may or may not have been saying.
Do you have any suggestions as to what the adults in the schools could do to make somebody like you feel safer with that?
Certainly having some sort of display there's safe space. You can do safe space training, and you can get a little sticker that can go on your door or window that is I'm a safe person, or even just you can get a flag and be I'm safe to come out to, or something like that, where people can just see it. Maybe they walk by your office every day and then suddenly they're like, I remember seeing a flag on this office. Now I know I can maybe go and talk to them about it. Okay, great.
Thank you. Again, we have lots of comments thanking you. So inspiring. And we have a couple more questions. Who was the person that helped you through your rough patch through drinking?
I really pulled myself up by my own bootstraps. I tried to go to AA, but I didn't really like it. And I I didn't really like the fact that I had to be in a men's group because I didn't feel comfortable with a bunch of cisgender men who had no similar life experience to me in any way. And I couldn't just go in a women's group, which is where I would feel more comfortable. I have like all female friends, you know, and some male friends, but and so I never really searched out if there was an LGBT group. I just kind of was like, you know what, I'm just gonna like cold turkey it. And I do have a friend, another trans guy who is sober as well, and he was newly transitioned. So like I was kind of helping him with his transition steps, and he would talk to me about sobriety. So I had him kind of as like an unofficial sponsor, I guess you could say. He's just somebody I knew I could text if I had an issue, but I really just did a lot of like, I kept myself busy, truly. I worked 2 jobs. I gave myself no opportunity to have free time. Because if I had free time, I would just go drink. So I was like, I just have to stay so busy that all I do is work and sleep. Not the best way to do it. Do not follow my path.
We have a light question, not related to the subject. Somebody wants to know if you're a cat person.
Yes, I'm sure you saw some cats in the background. My cat was in my lap. We've got 3 cats and 1 dog. So yes, I'm a cat person. This is my cat who died. I have a cat on my arm. So yes.
Yeah. Oh, great. We have some people who are making comments and relating to the story. Those are in there. I have, I think, let's see, as far as questions are concerned, what connection do you have with the name Liam, or to the name Liam?
So yes, fun story about how I named myself. So before I had come out to anyone, when I was still kind of like in between figuring it out, I texted some of my friends, my close friends, and because when you go to name yourself, I mean, that's like such a big responsibility. It's like, I don't even know what my name should be. Like somebody else gave me the other name. Like, I don't know. I don't want to pick. I don't feel like I know what my name is, you know. Some people can figure it out. I didn't want to be that person that tried a bunch of things. I wanted to just like come out once and have one name, not have to keep changing it around. So I texted some friends and was like, hey, random question. What do you think my name would be if I was a boy? Because I figured these people know me really well. They have a sense of who I am. They might think of a name that feels like me in a more masculine way. And my best friend said Liam, and it just stuck out to me. And it means protector, which is like my entire personality is like protector, fixer, take care. You know, I do everything for everyone, and that's very much my role always. And also my grandfather who has passed, his name was William, and so Liam is the shortened version of William. So I have that little connection as well. Wasn't intentional, but also it is special to me in that way.
Great. I have a question. Have you, and maybe you addressed this in the presentation, but have you ever experienced anger, violence, or hatred?
Only at Five Guys, not so much violence, but definitely they were not nice to me on purpose. Like they would push my buttons, they would call me the wrong name, they would just really get under my skin on purpose. And you know, that was really my only experience of it. Sometimes I get mean comments on the internet, but like literally my parents have said it all, so you can't hurt me with your comment on YouTube. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very lucky to have had a relatively not bad experience. You know, really the only unsupportive people in my life are my parents and people from our old church growing up. But everybody else, I mean, cousins, aunts, uncles, everybody in my family is like, yeah, we love you. So I'm lucky in that way.
Yeah, I think I feel like there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding, and I think it really is born out of fear of the unknown and not knowing. Totally. And you know, people can get angry or, you know, frustrated because they don't know, and you know, events like this, opportunities for you to speak. Again, as Katrina said at the beginning, you know, lifting your voice, lifting your story, sharing your story, and really the bravery and the courage that you show in doing events like this. It's just really, really appreciated, and people are putting it in the chat. So people are really happy to have had this opportunity.
Wonderful. I would have much preferred in person so I could see all of your faces as well. I like getting to meet people, so maybe soon we can do it in person.
Yeah.
Chat.
Very good. I think
we have some more.
Okay.
Hi there. So we have a question that came in of someone wondering how you found your community that you fit in with. Like how you came to be with that, and if you have any ideas or suggestions for someone else also looking for that community, and possibly anyone looking for resources for someone that's 50 plus years old.
So I found a lot of the trans community at first online. I mean, I was watching other people, and there was a couple of other guys who we started following each other, and we were on similar timelines. Who, I think one guy lives in Tennessee, the other guy lives in Florida. I actually got to hang out in person with both of them at one point back in 2019. The one guy was up in New Hampshire, and we were like, hey, we have to connect in person. We've been following each other on the internet for so long. But and then I met a lot of people through working on the House bill stuff, being really involved with the state legislature and what's happening in Concord every year. You know, there's a good community of people that get involved that way. Other than that, I'm really like not super connected in the Keene area. And it's kind of been like a lot of online, and then we end up kind of connecting in person at some point. And especially, you know, with COVID, all of our friendships are like online right now. But I've just gotten into Reddit. I don't really know anything about that either. I'm like pretty much 85 on the inside. So like TikTok, all these things are like beyond my understanding. I'm like, how does this work? And what do these words mean? And how do I make a video? But I think online is a good place to start. And then you can try and make connections from there. And I'm not really sure about the 50 plus community. I mean, you could try YouTube, but I don't know how many people are posting. It's really a lot of us young guys. And that's how I've made a lot of connections. But yeah, a lot of my trans friends are online friends, more or less.
Beautiful.
I wish I had a better answer, truly.
Well, I mean, it just, you know, there needs to be more resources. There just
right.
does. Yeah. You know, and the more we talk about the need for that, hopefully that normalizes it and allows, you know, more people to have communities in there that are local for them and in person. Because we all need support, right? You said something in your presentation that I wanted to ask if you felt comfortable elaborating on. And so you said that you stayed with somebody too long because you felt you had to, because they knew that you were trans. And then you also said that was sort of the narrative, that was sort of the consensus for, you know, other people that you maybe had spoken to. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Do you feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, so I mean, when I first came out as trans, I started trying to find people on the internet to follow, and a lot of the people I was coming across on YouTube or Instagram were also like dating someone who had known them pre-transition, and so I had just started dating somebody as I was coming out. We had just met at college, and so we were together for about a year and a half. A lot of it was long distance, but definitely I felt like, you know, oh, this is the person that I have to be with, because this is what I'm seeing everybody else that I know that is trans is doing. They're with this one person. And it's funny because a lot of the people that I was following back then are also not with that person that they were with when they came out. But that was what we were all seeing at the time, was like, you meet the person and they have to be with you through this. And how can anybody else ever want to be with you? After that, you're going to have to tell people. And it felt like a whole big thing, a big scary thing to be like, how do I date and tell people this? And that was what I figured it out, obviously. But at the time, you know, and I was newly in my transition. I was only like the first year of my transition. So still very fragile emotionally, where it was like, it was really scary to think about trying to date somebody else. So it was like, well, I just have to be in this relationship that's not really working for either of us. But we were just kind of like muddling along. So, and I'm very thankful for that relationship. She was very wonderful. She always saw me as Liam, was very supportive, you know, through all the steps and stages for me. So I know it was an important part of my life to have that relationship, as, you know, every relationship teaches us something, is important to us in some way. So I wouldn't be where I am without her support. And so I know it was for a reason, but we definitely both stayed a little bit longer than we really should have in the end, you know.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm an advocate, so automatically when you said that, you know, I thought of statistically speaking, we know that trans men experience more interpersonal violence from a dating partner than other members of the community. So
yeah.
I found it to be interesting that you said that, and also I think it just speaks to how that places people in a vulnerability for them to be abused, whether they are or not. I mean, I'm so thankful that you were not, but you know,
and after I had broken up with that person, we had split up, I kind of was like, maybe I'd be interested in dating men again, because obviously as a teen, it was like, I didn't like it because I was the girl in the relationship. I was like, maybe it'll be different, you know, two men. That was interesting to me. But I was too afraid to go on any dates with cisgender men. And a lot of times I would get very vulgar questions from people about my body, about, you know, if I've had surgeries and all these things. And I was too afraid to go into it. I went on some dates with some other trans guys because I knew that was a safe space. But certainly I was too afraid of what could possibly happen if I go and meet with these cisgender men, you know, who I've just met off the internet. You know, it was too scary for me. So I never acted. I messaged a lot of people and never acted out because I was too afraid of what could happen.
Yeah, thank you for that. Certainly a lot to think about for us. All right. And any other, any advice you would give to any younger person, maybe they are a teen or a tween, or you know, maybe even somebody entering college, on, you know, how to keep going and how to find in their journey to find their true selves?
Just keep exploring, and you know, if you have one trusted person that you can be talking to about this stuff, like, that's super important, especially if you're planning like a coming out. Like, talk to people that you know are going to be supportive first, so that you have a support system to fall back on before you start telling the people that you aren't sure about, or you don't know what their reactions will be, or even if you know that's going to be negative. You want to have that support network to fall back on. So that's what I had done. You know, I came out to all of my friends first before I even touched my family members, you know, because that was easier. They knew me for a less amount of time. If somebody didn't want to be my friend anymore, it was going to be less painful than, you know, my grandparents or my sister. And then obviously they've all been wonderfully supportive, but I had no idea how anybody was going to react. So have that one or two trusted people where you can even talk about, you know, before you even, you know, if you're just exploring, like having somebody who can be like, hey, can you try calling me this name and these pronouns, and have that person where you can be bouncing those kind of things off of together before you have to try it with everybody and then recoil it or try something different. You know, have that one or two people where you can really have that safe space to explore. And the internet is a great resource as well. I watched a lot of videos on YouTube about transitioning before. So by the time it was my first shot, the guys tell me how it works. I'm like, I have watched 1,000 videos about doing this. Like, I could do it to myself probably, so you don't have to explain so many steps. Like, trust me, I've done my research.
I think something I appreciated about your presentation is the time that you took on your exchange, or when you went to Poland. And just having that space to be able to think and, you know, be with people that you don't necessarily know. You know,
I didn't know them before we went away. We just had some classes together, but I didn't know them from anybody else, you know, so yeah.
Awesome. We do have a participant that has been raising their hand. If you have a question or a comment, if you could just please put it in the chat. Unfortunately, in this platform, you're not going to be able to say anything out loud. So if you could please put it in the chat, that would be helpful if you have a question you'd like answered.
Really appreciate the engagement throughout your presentation, and, you know, afterwards. You know, there are a lot of people that are making a lot of connections. You know, the resources that you've given and that we've been talking about, it's really, it's promising, hopeful, very thankful.
Yeah, I love to talk about it. I wish I could do this. I like what I do for work, but I definitely have a very passion for doing this as well. So
I'd
love to one day do this way more often. So that's my goal.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have some comments here that I thought were really powerful, and I think would be good to hear. So this one is, I'm not going to say names for any of these that are attached, just in case they accidentally didn't come in as anonymous. So I could relate with this so much. My son wore a baseball hat morning till night for years, so he got his boy cut. He was a ninja and a zombie for Halloween and was always a boy in every game. He is going to high school and is 3 months on testosterone. I am so grateful to people like yourself who have paved the path to make this journey easier and have given him the ability to transition at a younger age. He is still stealth, though. The fear is still pretty upfront for him. But thank you so much for doing this. I really admire your strength and journey.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you for being a supportive parent. I mean, that really is so powerful to me. Being somebody who I just want to hear my parents say, "Thanks, son," you know. So that's wonderful to hear that.
Let's see, we have another one. Liam, I met you at an event you did with the Keene YMCA a couple of years ago.
Yes.
As a fierce warrior mom of a trans son, and applaud you for being you and for your activism. I'm thrilled to see how happy and satisfied with life you are today. Much love.
Yes, that was a fun event. It was a diversity and inclusion event at the YMCA. So there was one of us from every different kind of, diverse identity. So you went from group to group to group to hear about 10 minutes of someone talking. So yeah, that was a really fun event to do. So I remember that.
Awesome. Awesome.
All right.
Lori, I don't know if you can see the other comments and want to read those. I think they're great to read.
I'm sorry.
So there's another one here. It says, Liam, thank you for sharing your story. It was so enlightening. Having known you as a child, I think back to the time of how much I wish I had known all those thoughts you were thinking at that time. I would have given you a hug. It's nice to see how happy you are now.
Wonderful.
Right.
And then I'm always happy to hear your story. I'm so very grateful you've gotten to the point of being confident and unapologetic. Beautiful. Beautiful. Another one, I am the grandmother of a trans grandson who I love and adore. Your story could have been his.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to type or put in a website or a link to something that was shared by one of our attendees. And I'm going to send that. I'm going to send that through. Again, it's for families and moms supporting their children. We also have a comment. Older trans non-binary can find groups on Facebook.
That's a good, yeah. I didn't think of that, but I'm in some surgery groups on Facebook for lower surgery. So there are, I'm sure, plenty of different topic groups out there for the trans community. Yes.
Yeah. Great. I know, and I think Katrina, you've been typing and answering some of the questions, and moving them over to the answered section. So looks like we don't have any more open questions, but just want to take this opportunity if there are any kind of ending questions or lingering questions, then feel free. We're going to be here for a few minutes. You can put them in the Q&A. And again, as we can look through the answered section where people are sharing their gratitude.
Well, I can tell you what business I own. I do septic evaluations. So if you're buying or selling a house, comprehensive septic evaluations, you can find me.
Really busy right now.
Yes.
The housing market is very busy, so you must be very busy. Yes,
I am. Thankfully, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, very good. All right.
Born in the same hospital as me. Cool.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, we have, again, lots of gratitude. Thanking you for your honesty and your frankness. And somebody who said that they could have used you a couple of weeks ago, maybe your business. What's the name of your business?
Oh, geez. If you need a second opinion, I can help you.
All right.
Anybody who's asking for the recording, I mean, if you also want to try and connect, and I can do a presentation for you as well. I mean, I'm open to that. So.
All right.
Perfect. All right. Let's see.
Excellent.
Awesome. All righty. think that is all the questions, but definitely lots of good
Questions,
comments
yeah.
and gratitude coming in right now. So I am comfortable wrapping if you are, if you want to stay
Yeah,
on
this is
for a little
great.
bit.
No, this has been great.
Okay.
So.